There's no one clear road to getting your work published or out there. There's lots of difficult steps, there's lots of problems that you don't foresee, and actually you can often be the person who's in your own way with imposter syndrome, in thinking you're pushing it but you're not pushing it hard enough because you're having a few worries if it's the right thing that you've written, the right genre, the right tone, did you write it the right way. So if we can remove some of the obstacles from you, it helps you get a bit further and a bit closer towards an agent or a publisher and to get your book out there. If you are here not through potentially my Instagram or LinkedIn, then just a quick hello from me. I'm Gail. I'm in Cornwall. I'm a long-time educator, teacher, specifically humanities and English. I have had a book published last year, my debut book. I've just handed in the proposal for my second last Friday, a different kind of proposal, and remind me to talk to you about that at the end. So I wrote a book last year. It's a memoir about chronic pain and my journey on the Appalachian Trail. So it's a hybrid of adventure and life story with lots of accessible topics that different people can feel they can get something from. It sold about 11,000 copies in the first 6 or 7 weeks, which is quite a lot for a first-time author. It went to number 7 in the US charts for a weekend, which blew my mind. And it has ticked along for the last year and a little bit. I was invited to speak at Cheltenham Literary Festival 2 months after my book came out, which was something that lots of authors tried to achieve, which is so crazy for me that I was there with G Fletcher, who you'll see her photo. She comes into the mix in this talk, who's a writer, obviously herself. She interviewed me on the stage to a sold out tent at Cheltenham 2 months after my first book ever came out. So these are dream things to happen. And I, for a long time, didn't think that they could ever happen to me. It just goes to show that they can happen to any of us. So I'm going to pull up a presentation. There will be times for you to ask questions. There will be time for you to chat with me. Write in the chat box as much as you like. We are going to, yes, have a rip-roaring ride through this. That's my book. Just as a little aside, oh my God, I love this topic so much. I'm just going to keep going off on side quests, aren't I? I need to stick to the topic. So just as a little aside, I got very little say on what the cover looked like. You would think that as the writer of the book, you might have a bit of say about what your book looks like. Nope. No, you don't. There were about 3 iterations before that. First one, I opened the email and cried and phoned up my editor and went, no, I will never promote it. I can't put it anywhere. I hate it. But got myself together before I said it like that. But I was so desperately upset by how it looked and how it didn't represent my story, who I was, my values, my color scheme, my vision, what the book spoke to me, that I couldn't believe that it was going to be enveloped in a cover that I thought was shit. So there is a tiny bit of wiggle room. And it was at that moment that I realized the fundamental part of this journey, which is at some point, you take this thing that you've created and you give the ownership of it to somebody else. And then they can talk about it, present it to the general populace, however they see fit. And it does make sense. My editor is fabulous. She is very honest and direct. She's coming to my next book retreat to do a session. She couldn't come this year, but she's coming next year. And she said to me that, Gail, we have to take on board your opinions because it's your story, and it's even more difficult because it's a memoir. But also, we have a billion algorithms, studies, statistics and research to look at what makes people pick a book off a shelf. So that is, you want more people to read your book than to go, that's a nice cover, but I'm not interested in it. So they use the psychology of lots of data fields for the colors, the graphics, the fonts, where things are placed, the colors that go with other colors and photographs to make someone pick it up off a shelf. And I had to come on board with that. And in the end, I quite like this cover. So what we'll cover in this whistle-stop adventurous hour, probably slight overrun, is what you would like to get published. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you what you would like to put out there, and you're going to write it in the chat box. And then me, and how I got from, oh my gosh, I want to write a book, to writing a book. So the next part of, yes, will be about how I got from dreaming to write a book to writing a book. And there's two kind of sections in this bit. There's the bit about how I got my agent and then my publisher, which is all about the proposal. And then there's a little bit about, after that, how you do the writing process, which can be really, really arduous and challenging, especially once you've got the agent and the publisher, which almost feels like the whole battle. And then you realize you do have to write 80,000 words. And then we're going to come out of this PowerPoint to show you a proposal shell and my actual book proposal. Not in any detail because we don't have time, but I will tell you, to my amazement, well, I'll tell you the story when I get there, but I was told by two different well-established agents that it was one of the best book proposals they'd read that year, because not because of my story, which was a good story, they all liked the story, but the book proposal was one of the best because it was well researched, well thought out, super considered, specific, showed how much I knew my topic, knew the audience, knew where the book might land, knew other authors that had written similar stuff. There was a hugely resonant why about why I thought this book needed to get out there. So those are all things to bear in mind when you want to get your book in front of someone. There are also things to bear in mind before you even send it off. It's to have in a pithy sentence or two when you are on a bus with someone and you chat to them and they say, oh, actually, I work in so-and-so, or I know so-and-so, or you're invited to a dinner party or a drinks party and someone's there, or at the school gates. You need to have a way to explain quite quickly why your story is important. And you need to get used to answering the question, what are you writing? What are you writing about? What's your book going to be about? Because all of us, I think, are likely to go, well, it's something to do with travel, or yeah, it's a romance. You need to be much more confident about the story you're putting out in the world and make people want to talk about it, ask you more questions about it, and then tell someone else about it. Because networking is a huge part of it. And also you need to know your why. Why does your book need to come into the world? And then we're going to look at what questions you might have. And then I'm going to tell you a couple of exciting things that are happening after Christmas. For the first time, I'm going to stop working with so many A-level students, university students, and start pivoting after my writing retreat that I held, that a couple of people here were on, into working more with adults and moving adults forward with their writing, proposals, books, all that kind of literature stuff, because it's such a great passion and it's working really well. So I think I would like you first to tell me what you'd like to write. You don't have to be specific. Don't tell me your book title. You don't have to tell me a title. You probably haven't got a title. Unlost was not my first title. And in fact, it was my agent that came up with the word unlost. Nothing to do with me. Sounds amazing, doesn't it? It's become like my whole thing. But it was Hannah who said, it's not really a word in the dictionary, but it just seems to be an element of everything. This whole process has been a massive learning curve the last 3 years, really. So don't tell me a title, but do write in the chat, please. Is it a memoir? Is it that you want to write some music? Is it songs? Is it poetry? It doesn't have to be a book. Is it that you want to slowly record your family history, collate diaries from your great-great-grandfather who was in the gold rush, or whatever it might be, maybe great-great. So please share with me, and I'm going to open the chat box now and have a little look. Oh, thank you, Alice, for that first comment. It's making me blush. Thank you. Yeah, I love the sound of all of those. And it's really great that you've got an idea of what you want to write, because that's one of the first problems. If you just know you want to write, but you're not quite sure how, which is what I've written under my picture. And the reason that picture is there is because for me, I find my greatest peace of mind is when I'm outdoors walking, cycling, hiking, swimming in the cold water. I know Kate's here, she does a lot of cold water swimming. Alice, you're often in the water. Lots of us are. And I think in those times when you're occupied physically, your brain has a chance to process other stuff, peripheral thoughts it might have, those thoughts you might have in a dream and you wake up and you think, damn it, that was a good idea and it's gone. Or when you first wake up in the morning, you've got, I know what I'm going to do, and then you get up and by the time you got to the bathroom, you can't remember what that great idea was. It's almost the same kind of thing with being in the outdoors for me. And I keep notes when I get them. I've got into the habit of making notes in my phone when I have ideas, and it might just be one word, but when you look back, it'll flash open that whole concept that you have. So how do you decide a direction to move in? One of the key things I was first taught, and you'll all have heard this before, is write what you know. So I've tried to write other things in the past when I was younger. I've tried to write. So I love crime books, cheesy crime books, cerebral crime books, clever, Scandinavian, all types of crime. And I'm like, I've read so many. I'm so good at writing one. Don't know anything about crime. Suddenly don't know anything because it's not my life. I don't go into a police station. I don't, how can I write about what it's like to be a female police officer in Chicago? Absolutely no F all about that. So I should just keep reading those and write what I know. I could write, in fact, I did come up with this idea with my friend Daisy about writing about a private detective with ADHD. So I was then linking in why she keeps losing her notebook and then making loads of really tangential connections. And I think there's space in the market for an ADHD private dick, but I don't have enough knowledge of the private detective side. You can, of course, immerse yourself in something that's not your field, research it. That takes a lot of time and effort and energy. But if it's your passion, you'll do it. And if it's your passion, you probably would know a lot about it. So if you're looking for a direction to move in and you just can't think of one thing, keep notes or a journal, not just a life journal, gratitude journal, but a journal about the things that pique your interest in a day or make you smile or giggle or that you find ironic or that you think you'd like to tell someone else about because it was noteworthy. Keep that kind of journal for 2 weeks and then look and see what themes or trends appear across that 2-week journal, 3-week journal. Is it that you're always observing things about nature? Is it that you're always observing people's quirky comments, what you overhear when you're sitting in a cafe that makes you just go, oh bless, that's brilliant, those kind of things. If it's that, then maybe you want to write a character rich story where you really bring some hugely depth laden characters alive in all their glory. When you thought you wanted to write, I don't know, something about horse riding, you can still write about horse riding, but when you notice that you love people and characters and quirks and funny turns of phrase and colloquialisms, you can fit those two things together in the same book. If you love travel, it's harder to sell a travel book, but it's easier to sell and interest people in a travel book with somebody, obviously you see this a million times, falling in love. So you've got two arcs. You've got the movement of travel and then you've got romance, peaking, breaking up, going in different locations, finding each other again, but all through a travel narrative as well. So it's often worth weaving 2 or 3 different layered narratives together to give something a little bit more depth. Yeah, so find your direction that you'd like to move in. And then, how I got, okay, so not knowing what to write is normal. And I think I suffer from a bunch of these, but we've got imposter syndrome. Why would anybody want to read what I've written? Why have I got anything to say? And you might have tons of ideas, and then you sit down and you go, right, so today's the day. I'm going to start 1,000 words a day. This is the greatest enemy there is, the blank page with nothing on it. So one way to get beyond that is to get yourself a little salt timer or to set a timer on your phone and to force yourself just for 5 minutes to just write drivel, absolute junk and drivel until the timer goes beep, 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 beep. Likely that within that time, you'll have gotten in the flow and you'll be at the beginning of a semi-good idea. You'll probably have written absolute crap. But you might be just on the cusp of thinking, oh, I'll just carry on and finish this sentence. Actually, now I'm in the flow. Sometimes you have to force yourself to get something on the page, whether it's a doodle or a mind map, and then sentences start to come afterwards. Words beget words. Ink on the page coaxes ideas out of your head. Also, another thing just to throw in, you might be a typey writer or you might be a writey writer. You might be a speak writer and telling your stories out loud and then have it written with like a text speak microphone. I am a typey writer. I always thought I'd be a writey writer because that's how I love to write. My notes, I have millions of notebooks all written. If I want to write a flowing narrative and I try to do it with the written pen, I can't. It doesn't flow because my brain creates, deletes constantly. And if I try to do it with a pen, I just end up with scratched out pages. And I think if I'm writing, that I've messed it up, or that I failed, or that I clearly don't have a good idea, because it's so long-winded to cross something out and rewrite it that my brain tells itself, it's useless. But if I'm doing that on a computer, delete, copy, take it out, move that around here, it actually feels productive and flowing and creative, and the ability to pivot. So think about the modality that you're using to write. That might help you flow better. What's the point? Got nothing to say, nothing dramatic's ever happened to me. I'm really boring. Well, I read a lovely quote the other day that I will murder because I can't remember it. But it's something along the lines of, walking to the corner shop and back is an incredible story if you tell it well. So you don't have to have something wonderful or incredible happen to you in your life. You don't have to wait until whatever, you find a diamond ring in the street and it belonged to the Lord Lucan, and then you find him. You can just write about your day and make it beautiful. You can find beauty in the mundane all the time and everywhere. So don't let that stop you. You will discover that these things are just raincoats. And if you open the raincoat, inside are 3 little goblins telling you you're not good enough, So these are just excuses to stop and to not write something down. Ignore them. They are what I call, and my friend Anna calls, the shitty committee, and they always have something to say. So you just have to always ignore the shit. Here we go. My book journey pre-writing. So first of all, I would recommend, and I decided a general theme. My theme was, well, I knew I had a chronic pain story, and I thought that's boring because I'm bored to tears by my 15 years of nearly dying, chronic pain, agony, opiate addiction. Like, for me, that's just tedious. And then I realized that it has an arc. And if you look close enough, everything in your life has an arc, or the story that you want to tell has an arc. You just have to find it. So I was, unwell, didn't know why, kind of got better, got worse, nearly died, got better, recovered, found my purpose, went hiking, met all these wonderful people, got injured, came off. Oh, there's a call back to my original sicknesses. Will it all happen to her again? No. Has an inappropriate affair thrown in the top of it. There you go. Bosh, that's a multi-layered journey. And the resolution is, it's a whole new world opens up for you. So for me, I was like, right, I will use the pain journey, but I won't use it as a doer kind of, isn't it crap that chronic pain is everywhere and it's really hard to find a solution. I will overlay it with a story of nature and adventure to explain 2 things at the same time: why you shouldn't give up, and how nature's really beneficial. So those are the 2 things I knew well. I knew nature and I knew chronic pain. I just wanted to talk about them in a more exciting way. Also, I think when I started the Appalachian Trail, I knew I wanted to write about it. That's the first time I decided I was going to write a book properly. I'm going to bloody do it. But I had to pivot, because my idea in the beginning for writing my book was that I would just be a conduit for other people's stories. My goal was to speak to people all along the trail, because I was interested in my motivation for hiking it, which was I got better after I nearly died. And then they told me I'd be in a wheelchair, and then I wasn't. And the year they told me I'd probably be done was the year I started the Appalachian Trail. So I loved that juxtaposition. And I wanted to hear why other people were. Now, as I walked and talked and listened to people, I became a narcissist and decided to write about myself. No, I realized that other people's stories are fascinating, but they're not mine to tell. Not without sincere permission, not on the ad hoc basis as you're walking and hearing snippets of somebody's huge tapestry. I couldn't do those stories justice. So instead, I decided to tell my story with these characters alive in them, in all of their quirky glory. So they got to figure with bits of their background and bits of their whys and their motivation. But I had to be the vehicle, because when you're talking about people and their life stories, I was the only thing that I knew well enough to put into a whole book. So I had to pivot. So that was good. I didn't give up. I didn't say, well, it's all gone wrong. It's not what I wanted it to be. I thought, well, we'll just roll with it and see where it goes. I kept a daily journal and notes. I'm rubbish at doing that in real life. On the trail, it was vital, and it was absolutely the key thing that allowed me to write a book that I was proud of. Because I'll show you my notes in a minute. Without those notes and the films and the photographs I took, I would not have been able to so quickly bring about the evocative smells, noises, tiny details that make a book feel really rich, tiny things you notice in real life when you're watching the world go by that you don't always see written in books, that surface level. So I wrote every night things that were interesting to me. Sometimes it was 1 or 2 words. Other times it was a smell. Other times it was a noise I'd heard, as simple as that. And when I was too tired to take notes, I took really banal film, just took my camera in a hostel or in a cafe or with a group of people with their permission, panned around, and I would speak sometimes going, they just fell in love, he's just fallen off that log, it smells wood burning, but no one can see the fire. I'm feeling a bit nervous, not sure why. It's cold. And I think about the 5 senses, and I'd try to note at least 1 or 2 of the 5 senses in my notes: what it smelled like, what I could hear, what my feet felt like inside my shoes. And those things are hugely evocative. So if you're writing a book about running, or if you're writing a book about swimming, or if you're writing a romance novel and you're making it up and it's fiction, it's still a plot. Think about the senses constantly as you're writing. And as you're noticing things in people's lives around you that you might kind of steal a little bit of people's real lives and shape them as part of your book, which is what we all do. Think about why that's interesting to you. Think about how that person's hair moved in the wind, what the lilt of their voice is like, what smell is in the air as they're walking across the crisp, crunching grass, not just the person or the idea at the time. Then after I'd done all that, got my theme, I'd had my notes, I had my film and photos, I wrote the proposal. There is no doubt to me that the proposal was vital. There's something else that's vital that we have no control over. But the proposal I had control over, and I spent a really long time with. So the proposal is the big bad boy. You have to have something amazing to show someone. But this is a hike to the Himalayas that I volunteered to go on. I raised money to go on it to support Copperfield, my friend Chris Hillinger's charity. I had, unbeknownst to me, a broken foot at the time. I was supposed to be resting on my month off the Appalachian Trail. This was November or October that year that I was hiking the AT. And I was exhausted. Part of me didn't want to go because I was so tired and my foot hurt so much, but I'm not in the business of letting people down. And it was the best thing I ever possibly did, because on that trek, I met Frankie Bridge, Giovanna Fletcher. I met millions of, 100 incredible women who inspired me with their stories, watching their grit, their determination, their courage, listening to all of their tales in this microcosm of 10 days of arduous travel, arduous hiking. And I learned a lot. I gave a lot. I gave ever such a lot of myself. And at the end of it, I was telling my stories about the trail to cheer people up and make them laugh. And G and I gotten on very well. And I said to her, "Oh God, I've always wanted to write a book. It's so amazing that that you've written books, and any top tips would be really useful." And she said, "I've been listening to you, I've been watching you, and I think you're a really great storyteller. And I'd be really happy to introduce you to my agent and just see what she thinks." She's like, "I can't promise anything. It's just me saying, hi, this is Gail, this is Anna. And then you need to take, you take it from there. But if that's something that would be useful, I'm really happy to make that introduction." And I said, and of course, that was amazing. And Frankie said, "Oh, I'll post about you on my socials when we get back," because Alice, who you can see just behind me in that middle picture, she'd written a book called Life, Lemons and Melons, about her experience with breast cancer. And she told me that she had been refused a book deal because she didn't have enough followers on social media. So at that moment, I was like, oh crap, I haven't got very many followers on social media. Frankie, do you mind saying, Gail's great, she's going back out to hike the rest of the AT in the winter or something? She went, yes, mate, love to. So she did that. My follower count went up by a couple of thousand. Thank you very much, Frankie. And then G introduced me to her agent when she got back. I did not follow up with G's agent because of imposter syndrome for like 5 months. Hannah replied and said, "Hi Gail, lovely to meet you. Thanks, G. Yes, absolutely. Send me over something. Sounds very interesting." You know, pretty run of the mill, nice, friendly. I didn't reply. I was like, "Oh, thanks." And then thought, "Oh my God, this is a real agent. There's no way I'm sending anything to a real agent. This is ridiculous." Even though I'm a good writer, I'm a really, really good educator about the written word and creativity. Like, I was down on myself. And then, because I thought also, I've got no time to write a book. What was I thinking? I'm going to go and hike I've got my permit for the Pacific Crest Trail, and I'm then going to hike the lengths of New Zealand's 2 islands, the Te Roa. That'll take me a year in total. No time to write a book, so I don't have to embarrass myself. And then the universe had other plans with COVID. So while I was resting my broken foot from hiking 2,200 miles, COVID came along and said, "You're not going anywhere." And then I sat and I wrote my proposal because I couldn't go anywhere. So sometimes that's a metaphor for, you do have to stop and make time to write something decent. You can't keep thinking next week, when the kids go back to university, when I get a week off work, oh, after I finish the house reno. None of those things you will never ever make the time if you think after. You have to go, tomorrow I am doing half an hour every day from tomorrow. So that's what I did when I got my proposal. I set myself a schedule, but more of that in a minute. So this bit here is the bit where the title is kind of a fib in a way, because I'm saying how I wrote my book and how I got my book published. It is how I got my book published. But I can't say, oh, and then you go and have to find an introduction to somebody who's already a famous writer, because that might not work either, you know. Your proposal and your idea has to be really, really good and solid. It has to have fire and heart and genuine soul. You can't write something because you'd like to be a writer. You have to write something because you think people will benefit from what you're writing. That's the goal. That needs to be your vehicle. It will make them laugh. It will bring them some joy. It will teach them something. It will give them relief. It will help them feel seen. They won't feel so alone. They will feel comforted, thrilled, entertained, diverted from the big, horrible world we're in. That's what will get your book picked up. And then the connections like this, people, if they saw this on the surface, will think, oh, well, that's why Gail got her book published, because she met Giovanna and Giovanna made it happen. Well, Giovanna did introduce me to something, but that wasn't the reason. Also, I would say a big thing for you to do is to network. I only met her, who introduced me to Hannah, became my agent, because I was willing to put myself out there and volunteer and go and do something and raise money for a charity. It wasn't because I asked a friend of a friend who knows someone, does anyone know anyone that can help me out? I led with helping someone else out. And I think, although that's a bit hippy dippy for some people, maybe, I do genuinely believe if you put yourself out there and offer up something you can give, the universe, whatever it is, will show you the same in kind. You know, you'll get what you desire, or what is right for you will come right back. Then once you've got your work seen, once you've decided what you want to write, maybe you've made some connections, you've asked around, these are the things you also need to consider. And we can't go into this today. There's another time I can talk about all these things or answer your question. So do you want to have an agent? Do you want to spend all the time finding an agent and getting an agent to take you on? Or would you rather try and send your proposal to publishers by yourself? There are huge reasons to go for an agent. They take 15% roughly of anything, and that might sound bad, but it's not, because they have connections to all of the publishing houses. They know someone, they go to dinners, they go to networking events, they have friends through coming up through all these years in the industry. They will read your proposal, and not only will they read it and think it's good, I'd like to know more, but they will think, interesting. I was talking to John or Sarah the other day at that meeting, and they said that, you know, Hodder or Penguin or whatever is looking for exactly this kind of thing. So they will already know what the publishing houses are wanting for their lists that year, what they're missing from their list, what's hot, what's not, what's going to be hot next year or 2 years down the line that's still worth bringing you on board for, to cultivate you for next year. They also know how to get everything sent out to everybody in the right format at the right time to hit the desks. They'll make phone calls beforehand so someone knows something's going to be coming into their inbox to look at. If you're on your own, you need to find the publishing houses. You need to then find the publisher or the editor in the publishing house, the agent who's bringing them in, commissioning editor, who is right for your genre, for your style of book. Because if your book lands on, or your proposal lands on someone's desk, it's not quite right for what they like and what they love to publish in that house, they won't go, oh, I'm going to read this and maybe pass it to Barb. They're going to go, not for me, in the bin, or delete, because they've got hundreds and hundreds of things coming in. Oh, but then they're looking through all of their hundreds and hundreds of submissions, and one of their really good friend agents goes bing at the top of their inbox. They're going to look at that before they're going to look at 17 emails from random people. So it is worth trying to get an agent, but they will take a cut. If you want to get an agent, you need to look at an agent directory. Then you need to look at who they like to publish, what genres. Again, you can't just pepper everybody. You have to be specific. And that's when it's good to start networking, leverage people you know. In the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, you know, that whole, we all know someone who knows someone in publishing somewhere who can speak to somebody else for you. So even if you're not saying, can you introduce me to Giovanna Fletcher so she can introduce me to her agent, you might be saying, hi, network, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Does anyone know someone in publishing? I'd love to ask a couple of questions. And then there's your in, that's you begin chats, but you have to have your reason why. Tell your story in other places. Offer to go to WI club meetings, offer to go to book groups, offer to go to schools if it's appropriate, offer to go to all kinds of clubs, events, to share snippets of your story, to offer to do a little talk or a workshop, to do a slideshow at a scout group, or whatever might be appropriate for your field. Volunteer at a book fair, give your time at a romantic fiction book community event in a town or a city near you. Say you'll work for free for the weekend. You will meet so many people that will become your way in. And if they don't know someone, they'll know someone who knows someone. And you've already shown that you're willing, helpful, kind. They will want to help you back. And don't be afraid to reshape what you've written as you go forward. We can get very attached to our ideas. I want it to be this. And then you might not notice that you're getting an offer for something slightly different. There's a door creaking open over here that's for not exactly what it is you want to write, but someone might be interested in you writing an article for an online blog, guest blog for them. That's something slightly tangential. I would grab it, write it, get your work out there, start blogging, start putting things out in the ether and see what comes back in. You can't write your book, hold on to it like that and just wait, send out a few emails every week and wait for someone to go, this is the book we want. It might happen to you, much more likely if you're putting feelers out all over. I will say, which I didn't know, so many things I didn't know, that if you're writing non-fiction, you have to write a few chapters to send in with your proposal and a very detailed book proposal. If you're writing fiction, most people will want you to have written the entire book first so they can read the whole thing. Non-fiction, you don't have to do that. Fiction, you do have to do that. So when I wrote my proposal, I sent it to the 2 agents that I had the numbers for, thinking, well, this is a first shot in the dark. I had not written a single word of my book. When I got signed to an agent, I had not written any of it because it's non-fiction memoir. Don't tell anyone else. It sounds like I've just been winging it from the beginning. I haven't. I've been practicing writing for a long time. Then you get to the writing bit. Lucky me, I had a job posting to the Bahamas for 3 months to a private estate where I was tutoring some high net worth families, 3 children. So I set myself a goal when I wasn't tutoring. I would, every morning, that Scrivener open on my laptop screen in my pool house. If you can get this kind of gig to write a book, go for it. But I would, say that you do need to carve out quiet time if you can, but that might be shutting yourself in the bathroom and locking it and sitting next to the bath with your laptop so no one can get to you to disturb you for half an hour a day. So I would set my alarm 7 a.m. let's say, and I was not allowed to step away from the computer. I didn't do it with time. I did, it's 1,000 words or you're not allowed to get up. It's 1,000 words. Even if 300 of those are crap at the end, you've got to write 1,000 words a day. And I did it. And I wrote the book in 2.5 months, and that I just wrote it. The first week and a half felt irritating, blocked, tried to write, it wasn't brilliant. And after that, it felt wonderful. which I would never thought it would, to get up every morning and write 1,000 words. Sometimes it was 3,000 words, but every day, that ritual, that routine, it really began to flow. My brain knew what it was going to expect. And that worked so much better for me with my ADHD brain, I think, than ad hoc grabbing half an hour in the afternoon to write, or grabbing, an hour after everyone's gone to bed. I need to know no one's going to disturb me, that I've got clear flow, no one's going to knock on the door, no one's going to try and text me, it's early in the morning, and I can just get my head into the zone. When I was writing, before I wrote, I was lucky. My adventure on the Appalachian Trail had a natural narrative framework, because you start at the beginning of the journey and you end at the end of the journey, and I could pin all sorts of other themes to that physical journey. And my journal had been this daily story, so I could cherry pick bits and make it flow. If you're writing fiction, if you're writing something more contemporary or slightly more avant-garde, where you're jumping around in time and space and there's callbacks and fall forwards, it's going to be a little bit more tricky for you. But I would really, really recommend that you at least have a skeleton of an outline of what your beginning, middle, and end are like. And if you take it back to secondary school basic English kind of structure for creative writing, now, Story Mountain, that narrative arc where you have your introduction, you have your climax of action, the build up, the resolution, and you come back down and you're out. Just that simple Story Mountain framework in your head about how you want things to be in your book. And then your writing will flow from you daily much better, because you are pinning it to part of a Story Mountain. Also, don't be afraid to start in the middle if that's how your brain, or write the end first and write to the end, write from the end backwards. Don't think you have to write the introduction chapter and it has to be. I remember a writing coach or writing teacher years ago saying to me, all these great openers, the most beautiful, best ever opening lines for novels, like Pride and Prejudice has got that phenomenal opening line that's so famous about a woman who wanted a man, etc. That stumped me for ages. I couldn't write anymore, because I thought, well, there's no point writing a book because I haven't got a really good first line. And I would keep trying to write the first line and give up. So just start in chapter 2 and see what happens. Forget about chapter 1, come back and do chapter 1. So there are no rules really. And then for me, another hugely important thing is to know 3 or 4 key emotions I want my reader to feel when they are reading my book. And that can apply to any book. It can be your stories for runners. They will need to be organized in a particular arc or have themes running through them. The contemporary romantic fiction, the travel logs you might want to write. I had things like, romance and passion as a side theme. I had courage and resilience, fear, things like that. And then on my story arc, I showed it like a music score with lots of different colors on retreat. But I tend to make sure that my colors of each theme peak and trough where I need them to across the chapters of my book, and where I want certain emotions to come out in the reader across the whole arc of the story. And then I lay them on top of each other and make sure I haven't got like 3 peaks of the same emotion coming up in one chapter, because that's not good for what my reader is my passion. I want them to have the experience that I want to give them. And I don't want them to have a cluster of 3 really important emotions in one chapter. So then I rearrange the arc points, the peak points of emotion, so that they spread properly across what's already a story narrative. So I'd make the story narrative and then the thematic emotional narratives with my 2 or 3 or 4 key emotions. And that's not emotions that the characters feel, or that the people in memoir feel, or that the travelers feel in your story. That's emotions you want to elicit from your reader, because they're the ones that are taking a journey through your words. I set the writing schedule. There's a really good app where you write in how many words your book is going to be, and you write in 80,000 words, and then you write the date that you need to hand it in by, and then you press a little button and it goes ring, and it tells you how many words a day you need to write. And you can put in if you have any holiday booked, or if you have any really busy weeks and you take them out, and then it tells you again how many words you need to write every day to get your book finished. And you write and you tell that machine how many words you've written each day. And if you've gone over like 3,000 instead of 1,000, it will delete them from the title, and all of your rest of your day's numbers will go down that you have to write every day. Amazing. What's it called, Hal? You're on mute, bird.
Pacemaker, I think.
Pacemaker, brilliant. Pacemaker for writers. It's free and it's brilliant. So find that online. Thanks, mate. I also did not read what I wrote as I wrote it in any detail, apart from just maybe check backwards, because that would have freaked me out. I would have started to go, oh, because I'm critical. I critically analyze students, A-level, university level students' work and writing. So I'm really good at seeing what, in a metacognitive way, what sounds right, the cadence is not right, the syntax isn't right. And when you're writing your vomit draft of a book, you don't want to go back and to worry about syntax and cadence and what kind of adjectives you're using, because it's like, just get it out. So don't go back. You'll slow yourself down. You're literally just throwing yourself in a bog and stopping your flow. Just leave it. Come back to it when it's all done. And then when you've written your vomit draft, put it under a pillow in the spare room for a week and go and have fun. And then come back to it. Do not try and look at it from the beginning again. You will not look at it with objective eyes. I'm going to quickly dip out of the PowerPoint. How did I end up choosing who to go with? Oh, that's a good question. Thank you, Erin. I had offers from, do you mean agent or do you mean actual publisher, Erin? Because there were two choices at two different times. Okay, so agent, I went with Hannah because it was a different kind of publisher. It was an agent. That agent worked with all types of publishers. Unbounders was almost a crowd-funded publishing house. So one was a publishing house, one was an agent. So Joelle was the commissioning editor for Unbounders, and you would have to crowdfund and give rewards to your community to get there to front the first kind of 10 grand, they might say, of your book to start the wheels in motion. And that's how they fund the beginning of the publishing process. And then as they start to sell copies of your book, you get really high, you get 45% of each book sold. Or is it 50? I think you might get 50%, half with the publishing house, because you've done a little bit of fundraising in the beginning to get that publishing process off the ground. And they publish lots of good books. They publish Chris Kalenga's book. They publish heaps of books, and authors can do incredibly well because the back end of it is 50% for each book you sell. But for me, I wanted to go with an agent who could then see if I could get in with traditional publishers, a book, paperback book, printed through a traditional publishing house, as well as an ebook and Audible. So I definitely let go of the possibility of Unbounders, who'd sent me the contract to sign, for the risk of getting an agent, but that didn't mean that my book would be out in the world. Unbounders meant that my book would probably be out there. Agent meant there's another step to find a publisher once I've got the agent. But I wanted to get the agent because I wanted to say that I had an agent. Probably. Imagine that. Who's going to get off the phone with my agent? I watched Romancing the Stone with Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas when I was really small, about 100 times. She's a writer, isn't she? And she gets kidnapped and she's off in South America's 80s classic movie. And she was always having conversations with her agent. And for me, it just romanticized the whole thing. When it came to choosing an actual publisher, I was offered a number of different contracts. One of them offered me an advance, and I didn't go with that one. I went with the one with no advance. So I got paid nothing before I wrote it. And I went with a company that was eFirst, a digital first publisher, where the other offers that I had were print. So the two main reasons. One was it was COVID. It was the beginning-ish of COVID. And therefore, airports were shut, bookshops were closed, people weren't going out. And I thought, people are buying more and more books online, Kindle. So if I go with a publisher who knows that industry so well, that knows the algorithms, that knows how to get Kindle books out there, then I'm more likely to get more eyes on my book. Also, there was the potential that they would partner for the best books that they had each year, maybe 5 or 6, I think. Octopus, which is part of Hachette, would take on those titles if they reviewed them, and they would pick some that they thought were good enough, and they would take a partnership as a traditional print publisher, and they would put them in print for Waterstone, WH Smith, etc. So I just had to take a gamble that my book would be good enough. And I spoke to Hannah about it. I was like, oh, do I go with this traditional person that takes 2 years to get a book to the shop, traditional print, or do I go with the eFirst, which is a Kindle, etc. book first, which is not my dream, but I can get it done and out to the world within a year rather than wait 2 years. And I went with the eFirst because it was COVID, and also trusted that I could get it published in print. And I did. They took it in print. Octopus loved it, and it went out, and it's in Waterstones, etc. So that's how I decided. I went for no advance, but potential for a quicker book out, and also if you want some help to do this, these are my adventures for going forward in this arena in the next kind of 2 or 3 months. I'm setting up an accountability and support community, a weekly check-in where it's not going to cost very much to be a part of. I just want people to be on board with it. And this applies really if you want to write anything, if you're just still thinking about what you want to write, if you just want to check in with a little group every week, if you want to send some stuff in for people to see, if you want to check in to be able to say, yes, I've written my certain amount of words and this is a block I'm having, how's it going with you? How can we help each other? That could be for blogs, that could be for populating your own website, that could be for songs, music, blah, blah, blah. Fiction, non-fiction, travelogues, memoir, journaling, anything. The second one is more specific, and that is we take those headings of my book proposal. We can use mine that no one really has ever seen apart from you guys and a couple of friends. And we can use the titles over 6 weeks, the 6-week intensive, and we do a section of the book proposal every week, and you send it to me, what you've written every week, and I give you intense personal feedback on each chunk of your book proposal until we reach the end of 6 weeks. You will have a robust, well-researched, fabulous book proposal that should be ready to send away, and you won't have done it by yourself. You'll have done it with me and a community, and I think, in fact, I know that is going to be profoundly motivating and will move people on into a brand new place. I can offer incredible expertise with that kind of thing from my 18 years in education around the world, as well as the experiences I've been through. So that I'm very passionate about, but both will be really valuable. One is a much lighter touch. If you're interested in those, let me know by email, and we'll make sure we follow up with you, or I'll send information out. Also, there's going to be 4 writing retreats next year at Calamansack House, 2 weekend ones, 2 5-day ones at different parts of the year, on the private estate on the Helford Creek, where we have the whole place to ourselves, and it's stunning, and we get people from the industry to come and talk to you, help you, and lots of very cool things that happen there. So all of that's available if you're interested. Love to tell you about it, would love to see you there. I am so grateful that you were here, and I'm so passionate about this, and I so believe that if all of you have turned up here today, then all of you have a story worth telling. I think everyone's got a story worth telling anyway, but you are just there, you're on the cusp of getting it out. And I want to read it, and I want to know what it is, and I want to help you achieve it. So thank you for your time. Lots of love to you. Have a lovely rest of the evening or day if you're in the US, and I shall speak to you all real soon. Let's keep in touch. All right. Bye, everyone. Much love, much love, much love.